nursery room. Now pay attention to your left side. You will see, guys. Yes, we are the new. On the second floor in far right corner, you will see lights coming out from the detail room. And it's believed that there is so much doom and gloom inside that room, they keep lights on 24/7. Even if light goes out in whole island, it has its own small generator and it keeps on no matter what. But now we are on our way to Jackson Square, which was the place of first courthouse, old city jail, and where one gallows stood. And our next story is about decorated veteran and war hero of World War I, Manuel Cabeza. He was a well-liked, young, handsome man. He owned a red rooster barn near the waterfront, and he was given a nickname Isleño, which meant islander, and that was a pretty big compliment when you were living on the island. And everybody in town knew he was smitten by lovely, beautiful Angela, Afro-Cuban lady of the night. In time, Angela fell in love with Isleño. She quit her night job to live under a common law as man and wife. Everything was well, young love at its finest, until that fateful night of December 1921. 6 clansmen with pointed hoodies broke into his apartment and beat Isleño within an inch of his life. Their cowardly message was clear. They didn't want to see a fair-skinned Manuel to be with dark-skinned Angela. But during the struggle, he managed to unmask one of the intruder and recognized William Decker, one of his barred patrons. After this incident, Angela patched up her man's wounds, but unfortunately not his pride, and the next morning, with ruptured kidney and army-issued pistol, Manuel hailed the cab in search of Decker. He was seen driving down Duval Street. When he pulled up next to William, took out his gun, aimed at him and said, "Hey Decker, this is how a man kills another man." Bang! Killed him on spot. Jumped out of the cab and ran to his home to spend whatever time he had left with his loved one Angela. Soon after, Sheriff Curry came with 6 Marines, arrested him and took him to Old City Jail. Now folks, to your right you will see the first courthouse of Key West, and next to it a huge white wall. That's where the Old City Jail is. And that's where the Manuel was brought in. And when they brought Manuel that night, Sheriff Curry dismissed all 6 Marines and told them to spend this night with their family members, as it was Christmas Eve after all. He did the same thing, but before leaving, he left the jail door open and cell keys in a plain sight. That night, 2 cars showed up. 6 clansmen again got out. With no guards, no sheriff, they just walked right in. And this time they beat him to death. They tied his lifeless body into a bumper of a car, dragged him outskirts of town, where they tarred him, feathered him, hanged him to a palm tree, and as that was not enough for them, they each shot a single bullet to his already dead body. Now definitely cowardly overkill if you ask me. And the next morning, jury and the judge met inside the courthouse. And before the verdict, I want to specify one thing. In town, when everybody knew everything, especially back in the day when we were so few, nobody seemed to know anything at all, and their verdict, and I quote, "Lynching of Manuel Cabeza was not done by the organized society, but by the individuals unknown." End quote. No arrests were ever made. Hearing that, Angela, yes, she was distraught, but she was one of many who practiced Santeria on this island. Yes, who practiced Santeria on this island. She ran down to the Bahama village inside the Congo hall, burned some incense, light up the candles, sacrificed poached chicken, mix bones with the blood, and shout to the night. Death to all those who harm my husband. After that, she disappeared, and no one has ever seen Angela ever again. And local legend says that all those men involved met gruesome death. And one of those men were actually Sheriff Curry himself, in charge of the courthouse. And if it makes you any happy, they really made gruesome death, which obviously they deserved. And another unfortunate fact that I have to report to you is that what the war hero of World War I had for nearly 100 years was just a lowly headstone inside the Key West City cemetery. Until 2019, when he was given proper military burial ceremony, which most rightfully deserved, and local historians his 99-year-old great-grand niece, and Marble County Sheriff and Key West City Mayor all gathered to pay their respects. And with that being said, let's give a round of applause to decorate the veteran of this country in World War I. And by the way, to your right hand side, this is the house where Angela and Manuel lived together on the second floor that we barged in when they beat him for the first time. Some of you may already know, but whoever doesn't, to your left hand side we have Ernest Hemingway house. We don't have any haunting history at the moment, but they are promising us with one, so let's see. And sometimes people rent that place and they are getting married inside the Ernest Hemingway house and getting doomed for life. But you will see 58 six-toed cats inside there, which you call Hemingway cats. They are very beautiful and cute. But to your right hand side, can you see that lighthouse of Key West? At first glance, can you tell me what's different about this lighthouse compared to others?
Short.
Sorry?
Short.
Maybe that.
It's on land.
I've seen short lighthouses.
It's landlocked.
It's nowhere near the water because they learned their lesson. The first one was at the end of the street. And actually back in the day we had only two things in this part of town. All the settler cemetery and the lighthouse of Key West. Until 1846, when Grand Havana Hurricane came with 200 miles per hour winds and flattened that lighthouse. Oh, yeah. Now that's a real liquid spirit right there. Several people took refuge inside the lighthouse, when one of those were Barbara May Bertie and her 6 children. Yes, we are there! By some miracle, they all survived when lighthouse came counting down on them. But unfortunately, whatever winds did not destroy, waves reclaimed, and the next morning, all Barbara's kids were washed out in the sea, never to be seen again. Only Barbara survived, and she dedicated her life as a caretaker of the second lighthouse, which was built year after in 1847. However, the storm was not done. It dug out some of those bodies that were buried underneath the old settler cemetery, and the next morning, decomposing bodies and bones were scattered everywhere. Families came out with buckets, not knowing whose bones belonged to who, and they buried them in mass graves. And that mass grave is in Key West City Cemetery. They have not used the old settlers one ever after, only for people who ever had the yellow fever and tuberculosis. Now, as we approach to the southernmost point buoy sign, exactly from that point, Cuba is in 90 miles from us. And pay attention to your right. Can you see those green and red lights blinking on the horizon? That's Cuba. Yes. If you remember, I also said I'm a big fat liar. I was just kidding, folks. Always a buoy, so boats, I guess. And the area that we're traveling right now is known as South Beach. It starts from the southernmost point all the way to Rice Street Pier. And we've been unearthing more and more bodies for past 150 years. Calusa Native Americans that lived here centuries and centuries ago, they never buried their dead. They just laid them on shores of Key West, especially in this part of town. And that's why Spanish explorers found so many bones and gave it the name Bone Island. And also Commodore David Porter's squadron were sent to Key West from 1823 to 27 to combat against the pirates of West Indies. And they would bring their fallen soldiers to bury them into the nearest US soil. And locals recalled it back in 1930s and 40s, there was pretty much nothing left in this part of town. And since they were laying sewer and water pipes for the new buildings, sometimes they would dig out those bodies, put them inside, they would lay the pipes, put the bodies back, push some sand, and just forget about them. I assume because a lot of paperwork and a headache and nobody wanted to do anything about it. But I've got a question. Do any of you stay in this part of town? No? Good. There have been a couple of cases where people dug too deep in sand and they left the island with real Key West souvenirs. Some of those were bones of colossal Native Americans, by the way. So we still don't know what lies underfoot in this part of town, till this day. But now I would like to ask you if we get doomed not to reply any more of those things for a while in respect of those people that died into our next story. It was May 1860. Spring had sprung and U.S. Navy were patrolling the area in search of ships that carried illegal cargo. They captured 3 ships off the coast of Cuba, the William, the Wildfire, and the Bogota. Unfortunately, all of those ships were American-flagged illegal slave vessels. And on those ships they found over 1,400 African kids from the ages of 12 to 16. And from the inhumane conditions as they were shackled neck to neck, wrist to wrist, ankle to ankle, they haven't moved or seen a hint of a sunlight on months on end in their gruesome journey. And because of those reasons, many were near death and many were already dead. They brought those captured ships into the nearest US port, which is Key West, and hastily they housed all those kids in newly built Fort Zachary Taylor barracks. And almost overnight, Key West population grew by half, and good people of Key West gathered what they could to feed them, clothe them, to comfort them. And that's how we got, that's how we got our motto that we are one human family. But after 80 days of their arrival, it was decided that those kids should be sent in newly formed country, Liberia, in west of Africa, to live as free men. That cycle of death and disease that started on those ships continued in barracks, and 295 of those kids never left the island. Instead, local carpenter Daniel Davis built all those coffins for those children, and they were buried on a remote beach. To that remote beach that we are approaching right now, that's now known as Higgs Beach. 1 year later, during Civil War, Union decided that they have to build 2 fortifications named East and West Martellos on the southern side of Key West, 1.5 miles each apart, or as long as cannon both would fire. Their plan was to build West Martello Fort on top of the burial grounds of those kids. Local army engineer objected, but Washington did not care, and during the excavations, they dug out those bodies and they reburied them on mass unmarked grave. For nearly 150 years, we were unaware where those kids were buried, and to add disrespect, they never even finished building West Martello fortification ever after. Coming up to your right side, soon you will see what was West Martello Fort. Supposed to be, nowadays it's just a free botanical garden, which you can also visit during the daytime, see it for yourself. And like I said, for nearly 150 years, we did not know where those kids were buried until 2002, when local historians, with the help of old map and ground-penetrating radar, they discovered some of those bodies that are buried to your right-hand side, to our African cemetery of Key West, second burial ground of the night. Now I'll go down there to point out to you exactly what I'm talking about. Whoever is sitting on the driver's side, feel free to stand up to have a better look, but I would like to ask you to stay inside the trolley. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Here you can see the continent of Africa, and west of it there are 3 small red X's. Those are the three departure points of those slave ships when they departed from Africa. To my left in far corner, we have Cuba, Florida, and tiny islands of Keys. Near Cuba, we have another three small red X's. Those are the three capture points for Wildfire, Bogota, and the William ships. If you pay closer attention, you will see 15 ovals shaped on top of the concrete, and that's how many bodies they found out of 295 in 2002. And I know report did say they were ages of 12 to 16, but some of those bodies upon discovery were no longer 4 and 3 feet. So we can fairly assume that some of those children were younger than 12. Below me, you will see symbols. Most of them are African symbols, which blesses their journey to an afterlife. You can come here during the daytime or even at night. Once you get closer, everything is visible to the eye. Read more of those information on top of this white pillar and on that blackboard next to cemetery. But now, I would like to ask you to pay attention on the other side of the road. You will see just a regular, huge green space. For Key West folks, this is really huge green space. And 8 years later, in 2010, they discovered 150 more bodies that belonged to those African kids. And Key West City decided, as long as city stands, nothing will ever be built on top of the burial grounds of those kids, and it will be designated as such, as a green space. They will never be relocated or removed. It may not be much, they cannot share their stories or their voices to what they've been through, but it makes me somewhat happy they receive some kind of respect that they definitely deserve. Now, with that being said, let's take a moment of silence in respect of those kids. I know, it happens all the time, trust me folks, but we gotta fix this gloomy mood. Because our next story takes completely different turn. I know you're all tired, but give me loud yes if you want to hear a loud story! Yes! About necrophilia. Alright, it was in 1930 and Elena Hoyos was brought to the Marine Hospital of Key West from Cuba, and her parents' worst fear were confirmed. She was diagnosed tuberculosis, incurable. She would surely going to die. Inside the hospital, working as an X-ray technician, young, handsome man. Who am I kidding? This guy right here. Count Karl Tanzler von Kassel. Self-proclaimed German count, an inventor and man who had 9 collegial degrees. When Count saw Elena, it was love at first sight. Because according to his memoirs, he had seen Elena's face years before, even before she was born, in his dreams. Since then, he followed his normal duties inside the hospital and doted on her daily, repeatedly asking her to marry him, but alas, it was not to be. For several reasons. First of all, Count was not Cuban, as she was, and that was a big deal back in the day. And another reason was that there was 35 years gap between them, and another was that she was on a deathbed. And lastly, and probably most importantly, more than that, yeah, they were both married. Unfortunately, after a year, 1931, Elena died in tender age of 22, and Count was destroyed. He begged her parents to take care of her body and all the expenses, which they agreed to it, and Count built a lovely mausoleum for Elena, which was to your right hand side. And don't break your neck, guys, I will tell you shortly why it's not there anymore. He would go there every single day without missing one, to have long conversations with Elena, and sometimes he would spend nights with her. You know, usual stuff. Until one night, she answered him back, and she begged him to release her from an earthly prison which he obviously did, he took her body out and put inside this wingless airship and called it Countess Elena. I know it looks like really ugly wingless airship, but for Count, this was a rocket. His plan was to send this rocket into space, near the sun, and with the help of sun's radiation, revive his love Elena Hoyos. Yeah, this guy. Well, in time, administrator of the hospital grew tired of looking at this ugly airship, and Count towed it across the town and parked it on a rest beach. Behind you, you will see the Rest Beach Park sign, and that's where the airship was parked for nearly 2 years while Elena was still inside. Although far from town, people will still wander, taking pictures, and Count being paranoid that someday somebody might find his treasure. So instead of finding out, he takes her body out and puts inside back to mausoleum. End of story. Right, Cork?
Yeah, right.
Right, yeah. I wish it was an end of story. He took her body out and puts inside his home. And that's when he starts her restoration. He wires her joints to make her more bendable, stuffs her body cavity with tubes and rags to give that womanly figure, puts glass eyes into an empty eye socket, makes a wig out of her own hair, waxes her, dresses her into a white wedding gown, and lays her in his bed, making her fulfill her wifely duties for 7 years. Fullest extent of term Maria, by the way. Now, I did say they were both married. Count was not originally from here. He came a few years back to work inside the Mary Hospital, and his wife chose to stay in mainland, in Zephyrhills, Florida. Although he was alone, neighbors of Carl have heard the organ music coming out from his living room while dancing with a life-size doll. He was also seen purchasing women's perfumes, soaps, clothing, but he was never seen with another woman. These rumors reached to Nina Hoyos' ears, Elena's sister, and she knew there was something off about this Count guy, even before those rumors. So she went to the mausoleum, and that's when she found her sister's body missing. She stormed across the town, banged on the Count's door. Count opened with smiling face and invited Nina inside to have a dinner with him and his wife. Well, Nina was caught off guard. She was surprised. She went in there to have a dinner with him and his wife. And that's when she saw her sister's body dressed in a white wedding gown after 9 years of her death. As you can all imagine right now, Nina lost her appetite, or ran out of his home. Count immediately got arrested, and judge ordered psychiatric evaluation, where he was found 100% completely sane. Maybe because of the guy that looks like Gomez Adams. He really does, so he creeps me out all the time. So he was fit to stand a trial. But what about Elena's body? Elena's body was brought to the local funeral home, and they were so impressed how well she was preserved, they put her on a display and charged admissions for it. Now in 3 days, over 7,000 people arrived and paid money to have a look at her dead body. I know 7,000 doesn't sound as big of a number nowadays, but back in 1940, it was definitely more than of its population in size. Oh, Jesus Christ. And if you judge me showing this picture to kids, probably you should know that all the schools in Key West took days off and bring out all the kids on a field trip to have a closer look to a dead corpse. Because why the hell not, I guess. Date of court came and everybody in town gathered inside the courthouse. And only crime, surprisingly, that Count could be charged with was grave robbing. But they realized what a huge mistake. Statute of limitations for grave robbing was 2 years, and he lived with his wife for 7. And once again, this clever and same man was free to roam the earth, and he had the nerve to demand his wife to be returned to his wife. And what do folks think they did? But unfortunately, they did not comply. They did do one thing right. They buried Elena in an unknown location for a good reason that you all know at this point. Fit of rage, he left the courthouse that night. Mausoleum mysteriously crumbled. Yeah, right. And he lived the rest of his days in Zephyrhills, Hills, Florida, where he made postcards of Elena and wrote short stories which was published in Pulp Fiction magazines. And later he was found dead naked, slumped over on the effigy of Elena. Oh, who knows? Maybe it was Elena herself. I apologize. Some people believe that at the end he managed to find her body. I hope he did not. But enough with the necrophilia. In dead center of the island, few blocks away from us, in dead center, we have Key West City Cemetery. Like I said here, dead outnumber the living over 4-1. Just on that cemetery we have over 100,000 bodies buried, and our population is around 25,000. And believe it or not, it is a very popular destination for tourists and visitors because of those famous people that are buried there, and some very funny tombstones. One of my favorite tombstones, I would never imagine I would say these words in my life, but here we go. One of my favorite tombstones belongs to local famous womanizer, and when he passed away, his wife wrote on a tombstone, "Now I know where he sleeps at night." I'm sure she was so happy while doing that. But now we are approaching to the historic seaport, which is very desirable neighborhood nowadays. But back in the day, oh, not so much. Because fine folks like you would never wander in this part of town, because if you did, you would be found dead on a sidewalk. This place was filled with gambling houses, bars, and some very friendly women, for a price of course. But most dangerous was when shrimpers were in town. You see, those shrimpers were out in the sea frustrating months on end, fishing without their 3 W's. No wine, no whiskey, no women. After months of frustration, they would get back on land, paid in cash, and go watch some cockfighting, go some bars, and see those friendly women. And one of the most famous bars that they would love to go was called Red Door Saloon. Folks, it was the most notorious bar in the whole Gulf of Mexico. Because if you did not have any gun while walking in there, they would issue one at the door to make it a fair fight. That's why it got a nickname, Bucket of Blood. Later, during renovations, they found dozens of empty wallets inside, yes, we are the dog! Inside the walls of the second floor, and we assumed that those friendly women pickpocketed their customers when they were happy and passed out, and threw those empty wallets inside the walls. Now to your left, you will see what once was Red Door Saloon. They kept the original red doors, but now it's even scarier, upscale women's boutique. Men, this is for men. If you walk through that door, you will still leave that place with empty wallets. Just personal experience, I just wanted to share. But I have to admit, very pretty dresses, yeah. As you may have gathered, many of our houses, if not most of them, have its own haunting history and spirits. Many were remodeled, many were repurposed, many were refurbished, so many were not. That house was just sold actually for $3 million, which proves my point that this is a very desirable neighborhood. Many of the houses moved to completely different locations, and some of those changed the owners. But these hauntings and spirits still follow them. And one of the teeny tiny house that remodeled into a bar belonged to Frank Ortiz. He was gardener and very close friend of Tennessee Williams, and he was also real party animal. Anytime somebody would pass by his home, he would take out the shots with full of drinks, would drink with them, would dance with them on his favorite song, on ABBA's Dancing Queen. Like I said, real party animal. We thought he did not have any enemy And why would we think otherwise? Until one night, somebody approached him with a different kind of shot, and he was killed in front of his doorstep. When police arrived, they checked the whole house, but they couldn't see anything in the value of his home. Even the money that was kept on top of his drawers was not touched. So till this day, it's a mystery why he was killed. And now Frank's home is remodeled into a very famous bar in town, which is called Shots and Giggles. But obviously, not every shot was with giggles. And tucked away in the corner to your left, you will see what was once was spent for this home. And if workers of that bar do not play his favorite song, ABBA's Dancing Queen, he loves to explode the light bulbs inside the bar, which happened numerous times. And another haunted bar is block away from us, Captain Tony's, which is original Sloppy Joe's, by the way. But before all those bars, we had the courtyard in there, and inside the courtyard we had a hanging tree. And we believe that if you cut down the hanging tree, it can bring a bad luck. So Captain Tony, we modeled his bar around that hanging tree. We will pass by it just now. Pay attention to your left, you will slow down just a tad bit. And behind the bar stools, you can see that huge white tree is still in there.
I think so.
Can you see that? But I've got a question. Have any of you ever been inside the Captain Tony's?
No.
You? Have you seen Tombstone?
Elvira?
No, Reba Sawyer? There is a second one too. There is a tombstone, one of them is Reba Sawyer. When she passed away, her husband found love letters which did not belong to him in their home. In love letters, it clearly explained that Reba would go there to have a few drinks with her secret lover and then go to his home to make more babies for our lovely islands, I guess. Enraged, Reba's husband ran to cemetery, dug out their tombstone and put it in the middle of Captain Tony's and said, if they loved each other when they were alive, they can love each other in death. So if you walk in there and see a tombstone, know that it's not a decoration piece. It's a real, genuine tombstone. But now our time is slowly dying. And if you like some of our sites, historic sites like Shipwreck Museum, you can go tomorrow, climb the tower. I've heard the view is to die for. So please folks, be careful. Like bartenders and servers, we accept the tips. Anything is highly appreciated. But most importantly, if you liked our tour, please leave a review on TripAdvisor or any other social platform. My name is Val, V-A-L. His name is Carl, K-A-R-L. However, if you did not like our tour, my name is Tom and his name is Jerry. Never forget that. It's very important. And let's give a round of applause to Carl for not doing us. Speaking about the dooming, I'm going to lift those curses from you. You're no longer doomed. You can go out in the streets of Key West and have as much fun as possible. Drink as much as you can, if you are allowed to, by the way. Doom us when you see us, when you become liquid spirits, so we can keep our tradition going. And whether you like it or not, we appreciate you. And it was world to us that you came here with us. And we wish you the amazing rest of the vacation. Love you all. I'm out.